Hello, I'm Professor Matthew Rotella, and in this tutorial I'm going to use Nurbs modeling tools to create various parts of a conga drum. I'm mainly going to be using the I'm going to use a variety of tools, but I'm mainly going to be using the Revolve Tool in this case, as well as extruding using curves. And I'll talk about a few different ways of how to model certain pieces as I go through it. But in any case, let's get started. First things first, which I'm going to get my reference imagery in, and then, so I have this conga here that I'm going to use for the purposes of the demo. I'm going to put that right into my front orthograph, and then I'm just going to come in here, and you can see what I'm working with. The first thing that I'm going to start with is I'm going to start with these pieces here that tighten the different parts of the head around the body of the conga and are used for tuning it. Now, I'm not going to be modeling the threading that comes on this because ideally what you would do is you would actually model the threading the same way I do in my screw tutorial, which you can find elsewhere on my YouTube channel, and I think I'll link it down in the description. But you would model the threading the same way I do in my screw tutorial, and then you would extrude that poly geometry along a curve like so, the same way I do in my extrude polygon geometry along a curve tutorial. But just to give a little highlight on lofting using nothing but curves, I just want to pay a little attention to that right now. So just to show you how that functions as well. So I'm going to make a circle. I'm going to scale it down and make sure it's roughly the width of what I'm working with here. Now it looks like it is, and I'm going to drop that down yonder. I'm going to give it a little tilt to match the tilt that we're working with here. And now I'm going to make a curve that follows this piece. So, and also you ought model to scale, but I'm not concerned about that right now for the sake of time here. But I'm going to use my Bezier curve tool and just make a curve that follows what I'm working with here. And perhaps I want to pull this out and over like that. Anyway, now that I have my circle and I have my Bezier, if I switch to my selection tool and I select my circle and then select my curve and I go up to surfaces and then I hit, well, let me open up my options real quick. Do tube, output geometry, Nurbs. I'll just hit extrude, and I get something that will match what I'm working with here. Now, if I go in, and I should even be able to get my original Nerb circle, and I can scale that in or out after the fact, even. And then I can get this. I can go to my modify and convert it to polygons. And by default, it will be set like so, but I want it to convert it to polygons with quad geometry. And to avoid getting some weird terminating edges, I'm going to switch it to general. This will generally determine my vertical edge loops, and this will generally determine my horizontal edges, which I'll just leave it 8 for right now, and I'll hit apply. And now I have my Nurbs to polygon geometry. I can hide my original extruded surface, and it looks like I need a little more information here. So tessellate, which I can insert more edges here to get something that I want, to get this to be more smooth and to get this to curve how I want, and I can push it further if need be to get things looking as smooth as I want. And also, and then once I have this curve looking how I want, so that it's not linked to my original extruded surface, I'm going to go ahead and delete its modeling history, which you can see gets rid of a lot of attributes that I might still want access to. So it's more of a finishing step once you already have the geo that you want. And let me see here, I also want to close off my ends, which I could do by hitting extrude here, scaling that in, or I could just hit merge to center on my extruded faces. And then, excuse me. And I'm also going to hide my original curves that I was working with, which perhaps I'll just put these in their own group called like Nurbs utilities, and it's good to rename other things along the way, but in any case, extrude, scale things in, mesh tool, edit mesh, merge to center, and now I have this that functions as it should for hooking down and tightening this part. And if I want, it looks like I have 6 of these going around. So what I can do, which it looks like my, in this case, rather conveniently, it looks like my pivot is already at the origin because of this being a Nurbs to poly geometry. Your pivot will always start at the origin. And I'm going to go ahead and go to my duplicate special. I got 6 things tightening down my head onto the body of my drum. So I can do rotate, and then 360 divided by 60 is going to be 60. So I want to rotate 60 degrees in Y, and I'm just going to want a hot 5 copies, and I can hit apply, and oop, I still had a translate value in there, don't need that at all. So with it selected, I hit apply, and then I get all these guys that I'm going to need. And now I'm just going to use the Revolve Tool a few times to create this part of this band that tightens down the head, as well as the head and the base for my body. So, I'm going to go back into my front orthograph, and perhaps I'll just start with the band up here. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go straight up, like so, and then I can see it goes up and over, and then straight down. Now one thing I can do is I can go to my control vertices right here. I can scale them in to make them align with one another. I can go here and go to my curves. I can go to my Bezier curves and change my tangent options to break my anchor tangents so that I can edit this one individually and do the same thing over on this side. Curves, Bezier curves, tangent options, break anchor tangent, and that way I can get this to be just the way I want it to be. And perhaps I should even have one more control vertex up here, because usually, just like when you're using the pen tool in Photoshop or Illustrator, you do want to cover your cardinal directions of like north, south, east, and west for placing your anchor points, but I'll just leave it for now because this will do for demonstration purposes. The point being, you just want to make a curve that matches what you're working with, and then I'm going to select that curve and I'm going to hit revolve. Now that will revolve said geometry around the center, making the band just the way I want to. And now, once again, I'll go create, or rather modify, convert, and then Nurbs to Polygons. Open up my options. I'll just leave them how they are. I can always change them after the fact. And I'll hit apply. And let's hide my Revolve surface, and let's see what I'm working with here. So looks like I'm gonna go to my Nurbs Tessellate tab. Looks like I'm gonna want, I'll need 12 going around. In this case, I'm just gonna, maybe I'll make, so I kind of want to swap the way I had it. 12-side cylinder, but I could make it smoother. Sure, I'll make it 20, and then define this curve going around. I'll make it 20 and 20, just nice and even in this case. Define that curve. Alright. Now you can see, and now that it's how I want it, I'm going to go to Edit, Delete by Type, delete its history. Now I'll select my edge, select this edge, go to my poly modeling, hit bridge. Oop. Yeah. I'm going to go select this one, bridge just those two. So I got the nice flat bottom. Then I'll just double click to select all of this, select these two edges where I didn't already bridge. Now I'll hit bridge, and it bridges properly. Okay. And so, Now, you can see I can use this to generate the shapes that I need very quickly and edit them very quickly, and I can go back and regenerate them if this isn't exactly how I want them to be. Not that these are necessarily hard shapes to model from scratch using polygeometry, but if you want just to get a nice smooth curve quickly without having to go back and perhaps add your geometry edge loops at a time, which would be more efficient. Like, I don't necessarily need all of these loops going around in here, so I am making some of my geometry, in this case, needlessly high resolution, but this is still a relatively low poly object, to say the least, so I'm not too concerned about all that. And now, like I said, I'm going to go in and use my tools to make the drum head as well as the body. And you can see how things are getting placed right where I need them to be already. And, alright. So, for this I'm also going to use the Revolve Tool. Okay, now for this, being the drum head, I'm also going to use the Revolve Tool. So, what I really need to capture is just this shape here. And I want to do it with thickness. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to sort of guesstimate at what the thickness should be, and place these in such a way now come down here and then go around. Now I'm gonna want to try and capture this round part, which will sort of dip in a little bit here, then rise up the slant. And now this curve at the top of the drum head is really the most important one. And now I can still come in after the fact and sort of adjust to make sure I keep my thickness consistent and my curves straight, and to make sure that I'm capturing these curves the way I want to. And like so. Alright. Then now I can use this to revolve from, which you can always edit these and break your tangents to make sure that you get this shape just the way you want. But I'm just gonna leave it like so, because that should give me about what I'm looking for. And now I'm gonna select this Bezier, and I see where its pivot is at. I want it to be at the center. Then I'm gonna hit Revolve. Now if I go into here, I can see my drum head complete with thickness, and I can give it more spans to make it smoother if I want. But ultimately, what I'm really doing is modify, convert Nurbs to poly, and I'll just still set at generally what I want. So I'll hit convert Nurbs to poly. Let's check my Polygon object that I'm working with here. You can see it's not really as high res as I want it to be. So my V number, which is giving me my vertical edge loops in this case, I want to probably set that to be at least 12. I'm rather partial to 12-sided cylindrical shapes, but I can also go like this and do 20 and 20 if I so desire, similarly to how we did this. And ultimately, what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete its history so that it's not linked to my original revolved surface anymore, which I can still edit and change if I need to. Like I can change the original Bezier, and like I can move that around, and even that will adjust my drum head to fit how I need it to, and it'll still continue to have these smoother curves like I want it to. But I don't want it to be edited by my curve for forever, so indeed I will edit, and this shape looks good, so I'll delete my type history, and now it is no longer linked to said thing. If I go in and start modifying, shouldn't be. Anyway. Edit, delete by type, history. Now, if I move my Bezier, and now if I move my Bezier, or if I edit its control vertices with my history deleted, then it does not edit it. I had somehow, and I deleted I undid deleting my history by accident. Anyway, now to close this off, what I want to do is just select, I'll do the inside first, just so that I'll just select this edge loop, go to my poly modeling options, I'll hit extrude, scale it into the center, and if I want, I could merge it to center to get a pole, or I'll just use fill hole tool, and if I want to turn it into quads, I can use my multi-cut tool later. Well, the same thing on the top, hit extrude, scale my extrusion inwards, and mesh tool, which I could have done both the top and the bottom at the same time, but in any case, fill hole, and now I have my drum head that fits relatively well, and you can see how things are just getting nestled right under each other with how they're revolved, and they're matching up with my reference imagery, and I'm getting some nice curves that I'm capturing relatively easily, which is really where curves would shine, as you would imagine. And now lastly, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do a single line, and this is going to be revolved also, but so I'm going to use my Bezier tool, and I'm just going to follow along from the base and just get my drum body going all the way to the top now. And then that's going to be getting tucked right under there. Now I'm going to want to go back in, control vertex, select this one, and for this one in particular, I'm going to want to break its anchor tangent because I don't want it to be so gosh dang long. Make sure that my curve is still matching up. reasonably well. And it would appear that it is, and I can move this if need be. Anyway, I'll use this to define my drum. So I got my Bezier, which pivot is on the origin. I'll hit revolve, and that will give me my drum, my conga shape. And now, same thing as always, modify, convert Nurbs to polygons, and let me see. I don't really need. I'll just do 20 and 20 like I've been doing. Get things nice and smooth. And you see I got my poly geometry. And now to give it some thickness, well, I could simply go about it a couple different ways, but the fastest way to do so, which first I'll edit, delete by type history again, and the fastest way to go about editing it would be to select all of its faces, or the fastest way to go about giving it some thickness would be to select all of its faces, and now just get my extrusion. I can scale it inwards in this direction, make it as thick as I want to make it, make sure its normals are facing the right way, and that's that. And now I have most of my conga made, and it's got some nice smooth curves to it, and it's made in all nice clean poly quads, and I have these shapes properly placed, and now what would be left to do would be to make these shapes, and a lot of this other hardware wouldn't be so easily done with curves. I mean, you could make a closed shape and then and make like a lofted surface for these, but that wouldn't necessarily be the best way to go about doing that. What I've made so far is really what would benefit from being made using Nurbs curves, and the rest I would just make with poly geometry, starting with my various Polygon primitives. But that's a pretty darn good start, and I hope this helps you see that how Nurbs can be very useful, and ideally you would want to rename all the stuff in your outliner so it's not just a relatively unnamed mess of things. But when you can keep your utilities, your curves, so you can regenerate things later, or you can just delete them once you have your poly geometry. But yeah, hope you can see how Nurbs can be very useful to help you make nice, smooth, curved shapes, and how they deserve to be in your poly modeling toolkit. Anyway, yeah, hope this has been educational, and I hope you'll join me next time.